Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I'm happy to be here with you today on this unique and interesting conversation about the Second Amendment. We're going to be talking about the efforts that are going on in the United States at this moment and have been going on for decades to end gun violence. And we have to have a very serious, very honest acknowledgement of fact. And we're going to go through this, and you may disagree. You may find this to be upsetting, but please hear us out throughout the entire conversation and then leave us your comment. Now, first of all, if this is the first time that you are seeing the program, we thank you for joining us and we welcome you. We want you to know that we do long-form political commentary on this channel, and every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive, on all the social media that the internet will allow to speak to you about the issues that matter and to hear your voice in chats, in tweets, even in phone calls to tell us what you think about the issues that are affecting us all. We open that up to the entire world because we believe in the First Amendment and the freedom of speech and its power to change our world. So we look forward to seeing you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Let's address the big elephant in the middle of the room, the really big issue, and that is gun violence is a reality. And it would seem, based on all evidence over decades, that progressives hate you owning a firearm. Progressives don't just hate the firearms, they hate that you have an intrinsic, absolute right to be able to own a firearm and to defend yourself. The reason why is up to debate. The fact that they are trying to disarm you is not in question, and we will verify that for you as we go through this discussion. And we want you to understand that this process that we are seeing, which is decades long, is not meant to help you. It is not meant to make you safer. It has never made you safer. Now, I know you may look at this and say that's incredulous, that this is wrong think, that this is some kind of partisan thought. It really isn't. We're trying to be as honest with you as we possibly can, and we know that the major news media seeks to discredit anyone that has a voice separate of their own that says something that is honest and true and backed by facts. But we want you to listen, and we want to see your comments on this. So let's start with what started this today. What got us to this point? Well, the fact is that today, approximately 5 hours ago when we're recording this on June 30th, it may be a little later when you see this video, San Jose is now the first city in the United States to require gun owners to compensate taxpayers for gun violence. This is stupid. And to quote the San Francisco Chronicle, San Francisco became the first city in the nation to require gun owners to compensate taxpayers for gun violence, a symbolic step towards addressing soaring shooting deaths, including last month's massacre at the Santa Clara VTA light rail yard. And this article is protected behind a paywall. But more important than that is, what are they saying? This is a symbolic step. I want you to understand something. It's not meant to be effective. This isn't going to make you safer. It's not even intended to try and make you think that this is actually going to improve your life, that this is going to make you more safe. They state it directly in the San Francisco Chronicle. It is symbolic. It is meant to portray an idea, an ideology. And that ideology is you do not deserve, you do not have a right to own a firearm. You do not have a right to defend yourself. That is the message that is being sent here. And the San Francisco Chronicle is identifying it and stating it right up front. Now, we had a response on this, which was, this is perhaps the most misguided and ineffective plan yet to come from anti-Second Amendment minds. Not surprisingly, it comes from progressive California, and no doubt equally progressive New York will race to keep up. We want to make something very clear here. We're not saying Democrats. We know many, many Democratic individuals. We're not talking about libertarians. We're not talking about conservatives or Republicans. We're speaking specifically about socialists, the Democratic Socialists of America, the progressives, and the progressive movement. They're the ones who are seeking to take away your rights. They're the ones who are seeking to leave you defenseless. That is a fact. Whether people like that or not is something else. But I know in 15 years of conversations with Democrats, with progressives, with conservatives, libertarians, we have made it, we understand. Democrats own firearms almost as much as Republicans, libertarians, and conservatives. Democrats own and support the Second Amendment. That is a fact. Progressives and socialists overall do not. They seek to take away other people's rights to be able to have that, even as their leaders are well armed and well defended by private security forces, and that they have the ability to gain firearms to protect themselves while denying it to the American people. That's Anna Presley in Massachusetts, who's used the police to defend her home. We're talking about AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and her many guards that surround her as she goes out to public events, and many, many others. So this is a big deal. And we want you to understand, this is all about politics. It has nothing to do with safety. Not only is the San Francisco Chronicle identified that and made it very clear, but just take a look. This is coming from California. And according to the Huffington Post, California recently banned state travel to 5 more states, making a total of 17 states where the state of California is denying employees the ability to travel. It has nothing to do with safety. It has nothing to do with health. It's because the state, the progressive movement in California that controls the government of California doesn't like the politics of other states. This is political. This has nothing to do with making sure people are safe. It's not about trying to ensure people's health. It's not about improving equality or the economy. It's politics. And politics has a big place when we're talking about the Second Amendment. And if you think that we're wrong about that, just look to PolitiFact on looking at Joe Biden's statement on June 23rd, 2021. Joe Biden makes the statement, the Second Amendment from the day it was passed limited the type of people who could own a gun and what type of weapon you could own. That is intrinsically, absolutely, factually wrong. That is a lie. There's no other way to say it. It's not a misstatement. It is a lie. It is devoid of fact. It is not true. And this is important to understand. The movement that is seeking to take away your right to firearms, that wants to leave you, the American people, defenseless, counts on the fact that there are select individuals who are promoted by the news media, by various politicians and political organizations, and say, well, these are the experts. These are the leaders. They're smarter than everyone else. And they want you to listen to what they say and take it as gospel, even when it is absolutely, declaratively false. It's not true. But because Joe Biden said that, and because Joe Biden is an elected official in the highest office in the United States, well, they want you to believe that it must be true. And it's not. And yet the news media overall does not call out Joe Biden and say, when they have the press conferences, Joe Biden, that is a demonstrably, factually incorrect thing. Why are you lying to the American people? Why are you lying to the world? And they won't say that because the reason is there is an agenda. There is a goal. And that goal is to leave you, the American citizen defenseless. Now, many people will say, well, Mike, you're just a guy on YouTube. Why should we believe you? What evidence do you have? What's your credibility? And I want you to understand, they use credibility as a shield to hide from the American people, to hide from the realities of what is happening and why it is happening. You know, we've been talking about, on this channel, we have been talking about the the Second Amendment for well over 15 years. And you may recall, even going back as far as back in 2012, when we were speaking about the New York SAFE Act in 2012, December of 2012, talking about how it does not provide any greater safety to any human being in the state of New York, and that laws similar to the New York SAFE Act provide no benefit. In fact, we were talking, and this was back in an article we had done back in 2016, going over in detail the issues that are facing us about whether or not Democrats were tone deaf, and speaking specifically about Democratic leaders. Now, one of the things we should probably make clear, while we have been saying in the past, Democrats, a better and more honest appreciation of the facts is it's actually socialist. Now, going back in time, many of the most far left minds in the Democratic Party, because they only make up 8% of the party, they're a splinter of a faction within the Democratic Party. Because their voices weren't loud enough, they often went by the term liberal, but generally just went by Democrats. And so when looking back in time, we have to look and see, when we have said Democrat, we should be speaking about progressives and socialists. But back in 2016, when we were talking about this and we wrote about this, we noticed that in many polls, President Obama and Democrats, progressives, pushed to sell the Second Amendment as only relevant for hunting and danger to home and defense seems to have failed. In an Investor's Business Daily poll at the time of January 8th, 2016, 72% of respondents were in favor of this statement. Is the Second Amendment still relevant and necessary? See, that's one of the things we keep hearing from progressives, what we keep hearing from socialists, not Democrats, not moderates. We hear this from progressives and socialists. We hear, well, the Second Amendment doesn't apply. It's not relevant. The Second Amendment is redefined as only being for target shooting and for hunting, which is a blatant lie. That isn't what the Second Amendment states. It isn't why it was created, neither in the time of the creation of the United States, nor today. That's not the truth. But they keep saying it, and they keep having elected officials say that. And the news media allows them to say that without correction, without challenge, so they want you to think it's true. And it never has been. And we keep being told the lie that if you just give up more of your Second Amendment rights, you're going to be okay. That they have the answer to everything. That if you want to be safe, if you want to get rid of gun crime, if you want to stop mass shootings, all you have to do is listen to the socialist and progressive mindset and do what they say and give up your Second Amendment rights, and you will be safe. If you don't think I'm accurate about that, let's look at this article we did back in October of 2017, which was a deep dive look at mass shootings and gun control facts. And we sourced this information from the Supreme Court. We sourced it with the Washington Post. We looked at NBC and USA Today, national polls and data. We went to the FBI and their information. We looked at laws in Connecticut and New York. We looked at the actual data from the FBI. And we went even to liberal organizations like 538.com, who also did massive research on the question of mass shootings and gun control. And you know, Everyone came up with the same things. We were told, if you pass the New York SAFE Act, you will be safe, that we will reduce gun crime and gun violence, and you will be safer as a citizen. The facts, 3 years after that law was passed, did not prove that. Consistently, in every year that data is available for, we see that rifles, that these assault weapons that are mislabeled, we keep being told rifles are assault weapons and that they are the deadly problem. They are the issue in America. And in every single year, rifles are less deadly than knives. Rifles are less deadly than murders by hand. We keep being told a non-truth. There is no factual evidence to it. And we know that, according to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, in her 60 Minutes interview, she stated that feelings are more important than factual, substantive, detailed, empirical facts. And that's what the progressives and socialists rely on. That you're going to listen to someone because they got elected and assume that they must be intelligent, that they must have more data and information than you do, that they must be some kind of expert in their fields as they tell you factual lies. New York State has never become more safe with the introduction of the New York SAFE Act, nor with red flags. No state has. That we have not seen a reduction in the crimes that go along with mass shootings or just gun violence in general. We have never seen a reduction because of the things that are being done. It just isn't factually true. You think, well, maybe you misunderstand. We had the discussion on May 20th in 2018 in a podcast when we had a very honest answer to a question. Can we end mass shootings and school shootings? And the answer is no, we can't. In part, we can't do it because just as the 538, a left-leaning news site, a media site, in their conclusion and in their analysis of 33,000 firearm-related deaths, there is no singular answer. There is no one solution that will provide safety to the American people. But yet, we are lied to and told, no, there is a simple answer. We just need to take away your firearms. We just need to leave you defenseless. We need to make sure that you do not exercise your inalienable rights according to the Second Amendment. You just have to give up and give their power to socialists and progressives. Because when you leave yourself defenseless and they are defended, when they are armed, progressives and socialists are armed, their leadership are armed, they have security forces protecting them. When they have the weapons and you have none, you are defenseless, and that is a problem. Perhaps you may recall when it was Joe Biden who spoke at the same time that he lied about the Second Amendment. He also went on to say that if you dare rise up, if you have any question, if you were to ever even think of trying to defend yourself against the United States government, the United States has F-15s and nuclear weapons. They make it very clear. They are armed. You shouldn't be armed. And they are armed better than you are. At the same time, they keep telling you, well, we have the solution for you. And again, this is why we go over the past. They expect you to forget this. We don't forget this on this channel. In 2018, again, we were being told the answer to fixing all of the mass shootings, the school shootings, the gun violence in America was to remove firearms. And as we identified in that podcast, we were talking, these are the same firearm. This is the Mini Ruger 14. There is no functional difference between the ranch rifle and the tactical rifle. They fire the same bullet. They fire it in the same way at exactly the same rate. The only difference between these two firearms is this one has wood and that one is metal. But they lie. And you are being lied to, being told that this tactical rifle is somehow more deadly because it cosmetically looks more like a firearm you would see in a movie. This is a lie. And again, it's the lack of factual, empirical truth, and instead being substituted by feelings, as advocated by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the progressive leaders of tomorrow, otherwise known as PLOT, the far left. Those feelings are what they are relying on because they hate you for owning a firearm. They hate you. It's not the firearms. It's you. That's their problem. See, we have to understand that these laws are coming as a reaction, quite honestly, because more Americans are owning firearms. As reported by The Guardian, this is a 7-month-old article, and they stated in 2020, Americans have bought a record 17 million firearms. In fact, they go on to say that the estimated number of guns sold in the United States through the end of September 2020 is not only more than last year, it's more than any full year in the last 20 years that we have records for. Can you imagine that? A record high of 20 years of gun ownership. And that gun ownership, by the way, is predominantly women and African Americans. Literally 58% of all new gun owners are African Americans. They're Black Americans. And 40% are women. And you have to say, well, we have more people who own guns, and it's estimated that there are some 360 million firearms in the United States at this time. It is a fact that there are 730,000 machine guns in America at this moment, legally owned and registered machine guns in the United States. There are tanks that are legally registered and owned by American citizens in the United States at this very second. And that's not a problem. But you are being told over and over again that that is the problem and that you need to be punished for that. You know, and again, we want to make it very clear because we also pointed this out back in when we had our speech this year, April 13th in 2021, when we spoke at Rutgers University in discussing the red flag laws, both of New Jersey and the proposals for a national red flag law. We identified something that's very important. The outright lie persists because news media and elected officials are expected to be authorities and above dishonesty, which is factually inaccurate, especially when they have a political goal in mind. That goal is red flag laws. That goal is defending, de-arming the American citizens, de-arming you, leaving you defenseless. We've seen those lies come from individuals like Senator Dianne Feinstein and Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, especially when Sheila Jackson Lee came out with H.R. 127, which we reviewed in detail on January 29th of 2021. And when we looked through that law, we found out it is specifically targeted to make sure that if you are poor, if you're in the economic middle class, if you are Black, if you are a woman, you are going to be discriminated against, and you are going to be targeted to ensure you will not be able to defend yourself, that your rights, according to the Second Amendment, will be denied, that they want to make sure you are defenseless. Because, again, the only reason for this isn't a reduction in violence. It's not a reduction in mass shootings. It's not a reduction in anything except your ability to protect yourself. And again, we want to make sure that it's very clear because according to CNN, again, we're going to the left-leaning sources to provide you this information. This isn't coming from the right. This isn't coming from conservatives. We're giving you the evidence from the left and from the United States government itself. Gun sales rise among black people as they look for firearm training and education. June 23rd, 2021, from CNN. About 40% of gun buyers in 2020 purchased a firearm for the first time. Why would they do that if we have red flag laws, if we have gun control, if we have background registrations, if we are trying to make it harder for people to own firearms? Why do 40% of American citizens decide that they have to go out and buy a firearm, many of them being Democrats, liberals, progressives, socialists, as well as conservatives and libertarians? They are coming out and saying the government is not protecting us, that we have no safety, that we are defenseless. We need to protect ourselves. The survey has shown that 58%, there was an increase of 58% of black gun owners. And again, there was also about 40% of women. And you have to say to yourself, well, why are people doing that? It's because gun crime. There's so much gun crime in the world, it's so much more deadly. That's what you hear from the news media. That's what you hear from elected officials, even as they lie to you, just as Joe Biden did, saying, well, you're more in danger. That is a lie. That is an absolute lie. Look at Chicago. And this is often quoted, but it is an accurate representation. One of the deadliest cities, one of the deadliest places in the world, and definitely in the United States, surpassed only by, I believe, New Orleans. And we look at Chicago, where we have data from the Chicago Tribune, a left-leaning organization, and their tracking of how many people have been shot, how many people have been shooting victims in Chicago. And going back over the years, the evidence is very clear. Yes, there are more people shot. Sorry for that, folks. There are more people who have been shot in 2021 than in 2020. And that was an increase versus 2019 and 2018. But it's about the same, if not a little bit less, than 2017. And less than 2016. And it's interesting because we keep seeing that generally in election years, we keep seeing these increases in violence. Now, that's a correlation. I won't say that the fear mongering that happens in elections, whether from Republicans or from Democrats, it doesn't matter, has led to a spike in gun ownership. But we do see that correlation. But what we see more importantly is gun crime shootings in cities with the greatest number of laws and regulations and restrictions on the Second Amendment do not make people safer. But you keep being told by elected officials, by progressives and socialists, that you will be safer. The news media keeps telling you, all you have to do is pass one more law. And they keep forgetting, criminals don't care about the law. Criminals and the criminally insane are going to commit their crimes, their acts of evil, regardless of whatever law said. We've seen that in Colorado with its red flag laws and mass shootings, even while those laws exist. We've seen that mass shootings in New York State after the New York SAFE Act and after the red flag laws. They have not abated. We see that in New Orleans, Baltimore, Detroit, Chicago, LA, New York City. We have seen this everywhere in the nation. The reality is you're not getting safer. They're not trying to make you safer. Progressives and socialists are trying to de-arm you, to leave you defenseless. That is a reality. And all of the evidence over decades points to that same thing. It's not that there's more gun violence. In fact, we are down from the 1980s and 1990s. There was more gun violence then than there is now. There were more mass shootings then than there are now. That's a fact, and it's documented, and you can look it up. Northeastern University Professor James Allen Fox has done a multi-decade study on this. You're safer today than you were in the 80s and 90s. There are over 360 million firearms in the United States, held by somewhere around 160 million American citizens. And you are safer today with those numbers. So the answer is, why then do we see San Jose, California, making a symbolic action to tell you that you're going to be safer? Because we're going to punish gun owners. And think about this. We want to punish gun owners for acts they have not committed. You're a gun owner. Well, what about car owners? Are you punished for drunk drivers? Are you punished for someone who decides to rob your local bank? Do you get punished because someone decided to rob your local grocery store? Do you get punished because someone mugged someone in your city? In any other example, do we punish regular law-abiding citizens for the actions of criminals and the criminally insane? No, we don't. But yet we are looking at every single law. When you look at the red flag laws and their denial of the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the 10th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, when you look at their removal of due process, that affects you. They're punishing you, a regular law-abiding American citizen, for daring to have the right, whether you exercise it or not, to have the right to own a firearm, because they don't want you to have a firearm. When we look at this law and looking at what's been passed in San Jose, it's symbolic, and there's a specific reason why it's symbolic. Do you think any member of MS-13, any member of the Crips or the Bloods, that they care? That they have ever cared? When we think about the sex slaving organizations that cross the United States southern border every day, when we think about the drug overlords and drug gangs from South America that enter the United States every day, do you think they care? Do you think they have ever cared? Do you see their concern? Are they ever worried about laws against law-abiding citizens, laws that affect you being able to go out and buy a firearm, you being able to go out and defend yourself? Do you think they care? When you get charged $400 like John Stossel in New York State for trying to get an application to be able to get a handgun, do you think criminals care? That those criminals who would actually kill American citizens, innocent people, do you think they care what a permit costs? Do you see them going out? They don't get registered. They don't register their firearms. They don't allow the government authorities to know that they are ex-cons with firearms that are against the law. Excuse me. That are already against the law at this moment. We already have laws for this. We have laws against murder. We have laws against assault. We have laws about improperly using a firearm. We already have laws like the New York State Act, the red flag laws. They already exist, and they don't stop criminals or the criminally insane. They stop you, an American citizen, from enacting your rights and to defend yourself. Because progressives, they're not upset about the firearms. They're upset about you. And that is the honest answer. They don't like you. They hate that you have a right to defend yourself because they want that control. They want to control your life, being able to be safe or not, and that you would have to come to them for your safety, that you have to be subservient to them in very much the exact same way we saw in the Middle Ages when the serfs, the peasants, had to go to the nobles, the lords that owned the castles and owned all the knights and the army, and they had to go to them for protection. And the serfs had no power. That's history. That's a fact. And they are looking to do the same thing, which is why we often say much of the elected officials today are neo-nobles. They are in for a lifetime. and they decree what you get to do in your life. And they decree how to make your life miserable, just like in San Jose. Because the Crips, the Bloods, the MS-13, the various sex slaving gangs that we know for a fact exist and are they're abusing people every day. They are committing violent crimes and using guns. They don't care that regular taxpayers are going to have to pay more for the violence that they are willing to commit. They aren't going to be stopped by a symbolic act that has nothing to do with them. It doesn't add a single day to their crimes. If they get caught, they're not going to spend an extra day in prison because of this symbolic act. It doesn't stop them. But it does stop you. It does harm you. It is meant to be an expression of hate against you. And it's coming from progressives and socialists, not Democrats, not moderates, not independents, not libertarians, not conservatives, not Republicans. This is coming from the far left because they hate you. And if the far left would like to come on and to tell us why we are wrong, if they want to leave comments to explain how we are wrong, we look forward to that. But we provided you evidence going back, over a decade, showing exactly how the progressive and socialist ideology, which has been transferred into law, has failed every single time. We are watching it currently in real time, that as they defund the police and they try and take away the ability of average American citizens to protect themselves, that crime is soaring, violent crime is soaring, murders are soaring. The policies of progressives and socialists are failing real time, and they are putting out more laws because they hate you and they hate the Second Amendment. And they want you to be the equivalent of a Middle Ages serf, obedient to the nobles and the lords that run the castles and maintain the armies. And I wanted to hear, what do you think? Are we right? Does it make sense? If we've made a mistake, where? How? We look forward to hearing from you, and we remind you that every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you to tell you what is going on and to hear your feedback directly in your chats, your tweets, and your phone calls about what matters here in the United States and around the world. We thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon.